반짝이는 눈빛 눈이 부셔 매일 날 감싸주는 손길.
Results of the same person test. Uri confirmed the result of the same person test and Uri's face stiffened. The results are out. Why on earth? His voice shouting was filled with trembling and anger. Suji tried to approach calmly while listening to his words, but she felt something suspicious in Uri's firm paces. What's wrong, Oppa? Suji asked, and Uri hesitated for a moment before answering coldly. Suji's face showed a bewildered expression when she asked if Uri's father had intervened in the test. In that moment, she realized that she couldn't hide the truth from Uri's eyes. She sighed deeply and said, I'm not sure yet, but give me a few more days. I'll tell you when everything is certain. Suji's voice was calm, but there seemed to be a storm raging inside her. The confrontation between Jinte and Suji. Suji, facing Jinte, stood with a determined look in her eyes. Jinte, with a slightly bewildered expression, asked, What's going on? Are you going home? But Suji's expression showed a firm determination. I have something to tell father, that's why, she said, her eyes shining. Jinte, looking flustered, asked, To me? Suji's eyes showed no sign of hesitation. Jinte couldn't understand what Suji knew or what she was trying to say, but there was anxiety in his face. In that moment, Jinte's eyes turned towards an envelope. Suji didn't miss that small gesture and watched closely. Is it true, father? Is all of this true? Suji asked calmly. Jinte seemed to be out of the breath, but he tried to maintain his composure as much as possible and replied, I don't know what you're talking about, but I don't have any certainty. However, his tone lacked conviction and his trembling hands made Suji even more convinced. Then Suji started pressuring Jinte, saying, Is it because he's not your real son? Jinte was angry at Suji's direct questions, but at the same time, he was torn between letting go of everything. Jinnong and Han Jinte. Jinnong went into her room, closed the door, and took a deep breath. She tried to avoid Uri and Suji's gaze once again, but she realized that she had nowhere to hide in their eyes. If they continue like this, everything will be over, she thought. Jinnong clenched her hands tightly and made up her mind to fight once again. She approached Jinte and said, looking him in the eye, We have to find the tie-pin. If you don't stop Uri now, everything will be over. In her eyes, there was venom and desperation. Jinte hesitated for a moment, but eventually nodded in agreement. We have to finish it tomorrow, no matter what. We can't delay it any longer, he said, his voice cold but unable to hide his inner anxiety. The promise between Han Yun-sung and PD Choi. On the day Han Yun-sung was supposed to meet PD Choi, Jinnong watched him with a more nervous expression than usual. Jinnong knew that the meeting with PD Choi was an opportunity to expose her misdeeds, so she was desperate to prevent it. Suddenly, just before Han Yun-sung was about to leave, Jinnong's face turned pale and she started groaning. Yun-sung, I suddenly feel dizzy, Jinnong said, touching her forehead with one hand and holding onto the wall with the other. Swaying, Han Yun-sung approached her looking worried and asked, Are you okay? Where does it hurt? Jinnong continued to act, her breathing became more irregular and her hands trembling. She closed her eyes slightly and sat down on the floor. The baby, our little bean, she said, clutching her stomach in pain and contorting her face. Han Yun-sung finally realized the seriousness of the situation and quickly called 119. We need to call an ambulance quickly. Hang in there, Jinnong, he said, sitting next to her with an anxious expression, observing Jinnong's condition. Jinnong took a long breath and acted as pitifully as possible. Tears welled up in her eyes and her lips trembled. The ambulance arrived and Jinnong was transported to the hospital. Han Yun-sung was supposed to have an important meeting with PD Choi, but he decided to go to the hospital with Jin Na-young because he was worried about her health. I'm sorry, Yoon-sung. It seems like I'm causing you trouble, Jin Na-young whispered in a faint voice. Han Yoon-sung looked at her with a complicated expression and shook his head. It's okay, Jin Na-young. The most important thing now is you and the baby's safety. We can think about other things later, he said. Han Yoon-sung had no choice but to postpone his meeting with PD Choi as they headed to the hospital. He tried to suppress his complex emotion about the canceled meeting with PD Choi and his concern for Jin Na-young's health. However, Jin Na-young's eyes were shining completely differently. Inside the ambulance, her face had a slight smile, filled with the sense of relief that her plan had succeeded. I stopped it once again. Jin Soo Ji, you're not ready to face me yet, she thought.
Cause you are beautiful.